Before we get started on this week's episode, I'm wearing the fuzzy three-piece lounge set. If you like what you see, I'm going to drop the link below and you can get yours there. They come in all different types of colors, different sizes, all that good stuff. So without further ado, let's get into the episode. Hey guys, welcome back to Fashion Meets History with Domii Davis. Episode 4 is going to feature the iconic Dapper Dan. Let's get started. Born Daniel Day in 1944, Dapper Dan has been immortalized in the Black community and Black culture. His iconic style and luxury hip-hop fashions in the 80s and 90s. Dapper Dan grew up in New York. He grew up, hustling and stuff like that. And, a similar story that we've heard from many Black icons throughout entertainment, fashion, all that, right? His skill set in gambling really set him up and helped propel him to eventually finance his first store in the early 80s. It's said that Dapper Dan left the street life when he was inspired by the words of Malcolm X. After that inspiration or epiphany, he then went and sought to further his education. At the time, in the late 60s and early 70s, there was a program between the Urban League and Columbia University, which fostered academic growth, and Dapper Dan took advantage of that. This is where he really got into fashion. It's said that in 1974, Dapper Dan went on a trip to Africa, sponsored by the academic program he was in, and it was in Africa where he solidified that fashion was going to be his life's work. As I said earlier, Dapper Dan opened his first official store in 1982. Everything was custom and made to order. So why Dapper Dan is iconic is because he took a luxury brand that we all know, Louis Vuitton, Gucci, Fendi, everything that's hot right now, right? And he reworked them, right? And let's be clear, these were not copycats or recreations. Dapper Dan completely redesigned these styles. What he did use was the actual monogram or label of the brand itself, but everything came from Dapper Dan. Because of how Dapper Dan designed his works of art, he coined the term knock-ups, stating that what he created, these designers could never. And he's quite right about that. In this time, in the early 80s and 90s, is when hip-hop really started, taking off, right? Everybody wanted to be in a hip hop group. Everybody wanted to dress like these hip hop artists, and Dapper Dan was styling these hip hop artists that we all wanted to be. His most notable clientele during this period would be like Eric B. and Rakim. He styled them for their album cover, Paid in Full. He worked with athlete Diane Dixon for her infamous jacket that we all know. He styled LL Cool J, Salt and Pepper, Mike Tyson, and even Floyd Mayweather. But through all his fame, these brands started looking at Dapper Dan. We can see similarities in the case with Bape and Nike happening right now, right? And so, spearheaded by Fendi, brands like Fendi and Gucci and Louis Vuitton went after Dapper Dan in '92 for copyright infringement. And even though Dapper Dan was creating new looks and not copying from Gucci's website, he was using the label, right? He was using their monogram. And so eventually it led Dapper Dan to shut down. But because hip hop culture is what it is, and we keep growing and everybody is influenced by us, Dapper Dan's career re-entered the chat in the late 2010s. And it happened in an ironic way. So in 2018, at a fashion show, Gucci launched a fur bomber jacket, which many followers of hip hop culture related to one of Dapper Dan's earlier works almost 30 years beforehand. But Gucci wasn't giving Dapper Dan any credit. Ironic, because that is what they sued Dapper Dan for, not giving them credit. But all the backlash that ensued from that actually helped propel Dapper Dan back into the conversation. Gucci then gave Dapper Dan a seat at the table, making him a board member for one of its academic programs. They also financed his store that is now back in Harlem and called Dapper Dan's of Harlem. It is a custom atelier, and they created a look back on Dapper Dan's most famous work featuring their brand, as well as a limited edition book. So for almost 30 years, Dapper Dan has been at the back of the line in terms of fashion and influence, not from our culture but from world culture. But now he is back on the world stage and doing what he does and making and creating the most iconic looks still that these brands still cannot copy. He's been seen on CNN, Forbes, all the big magazines, and he's now being credited by the same brands that took him down in 92. What this teaches us is that, like a lot of Black history, our creativity is taken away, bottled, and then replicated, but not really, because you can't do it like us. And then we're often forced to watch other brands and people reap the rewards of our creativity. But thankfully, that did not happen to Dapper Dan, because our community stood up and made sure that Dan got the credit and the recognition that he deserves. And now he is out here making waves again so that the next generation knows who Dapper Dan is, why he's important, and he can continue to make Black history. All right, that's it for our episode this week. Next week, we'll be back with another Black history icon. If you like what you heard, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. I'm gonna put the links below to all my social media channels. Feel free to share those as well and follow me there. And I will see you next week for the next episode of Fashion Meets History. Bye.